Hello, hello. Hey there. It's Josh.
And Amy, we're back. Hustle from Home podcast.
Still at home as we record. What episode is this? Episode 6, episode 7? I've lost count, Amy.
Gosh.
I know that as quarantine rolls on, the need to see the barber is really starting to catch up on me.
Well, I'm not even sure what day it is. I'm just starting to call every day Blur's Day. So
When when we're done recording here, I'm thinking I'm just going to buzz it all off.
I
Or
think you should
should
go
that
for
be
it.
like for the bonus tech episode? Should that be the reward for sticking around to the end as you get to see me with a nice buzz cut?
Yep. Good plan. Good plan. Low maintenance too for this time of year.
And it's getting warmer. Speaking of getting warmer, let's just say that your home hustle, your side hustle, your solopreneur venture is picking up steam and you are ready to scale. How about that for a transition, Amy?
That was good. Skillful.
Thank you. Thank you. Today we're
Sure.
talking about all of the advanced lessons on how to grow your business, going from having an idea, we're past that, and now we're going from having a few customers to having a lot of customers.
And that's a great thing. And it provides its own challenges, right? I mean, it comes with its own issues. Having a lot of customers is awesome, but then you got to have a little more on the back end to support that. More customer service, more administrative help, maybe just more of a system to run your customers through. Maybe you need some kind of a sales funnel or some kind of online offering that can help you to help more people in less time. And today's guest is going to be great to talk to about that.
Yeah, if nothing else, you're probably in this day and age going to have an understanding of how to advertise on social media. And so Rick Mulready is a great guest to have on. He's the host of the Art of Online Business podcast. He's built seven-figure businesses um, as an online expert and a course creator from the ground up using Facebook ads and Instagram ads, podcasts, and courses to really tackle this big question of how do we scale.
And he's got great insight too, Josh, on finding your right customer, really reaching people, connecting with people. So it's not, you're just not just putting ads out there or online products out there and hearing crickets. You're really connecting with people. You're finding out what they truly want, what's important to them, so that what you're putting out there actually gets you the results you want. And this is a big deal so that you're not wasting time. It helps you to grow quicker and scale quicker.
Before he started his business, Rick spent 12 years in corporate internet advertising. He worked for AOL, Yahoo, worked with AOL, Yahoo, Funny or Die, Vibrant Media, where he sold and managed online ad campaigns for some of the largest brands in the world. So it is an honor to have Rick here with us. Rick, welcome to Hustle from Home.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
So glad you're here, Rick. And you've got so much background in this area that we actually struggled to come up with just the right questions to talk to you about, because you just have such a wealth of knowledge and advice for our listeners. And I think that we'd like to kick it off sort of the way we kicked off the Hustle from Home podcast in general, which is talking about the way we think about things and our perspective. And you recently said that you feel like the success of an entrepreneur's business is 80% mindset. And that's a lot, right?
It
So
is.
can you talk to me a bit about, what makes you come up with that and what makes you say that?
Yeah. I mean, this is something that it's something I've struggled with for a long time. And it took me a while to realize that, you know what, all the best tactics and strategies are amazing. They can take you far, but if you don't have the right mindset as a foundation to your business, the business is only going to go so far. And here's what I mean by that. You can, you can start a funnel. You can get people coming into your business or what have you. But if you're not looking at things like from long term, for example, in your business, and thinking about, because what I see from a lot of my students is that they fear that this is all going to go away, that maybe they're having success in their business, but they're like, ooh, you know what? I'm afraid it's going to end. I don't know when it's going to end, but I'm afraid of it. Or they're like, you know what? They are trying to build their business and they're not playing what I like to say, playing to win. They're playing not to lose. And what I mean by that is they're playing from a scarcity mindset, right? They are, playing small. They're not getting on camera like we're doing here, for example. And they're not starting a podcast. They're not doing social media. They're not starting an email list. When you play small, you are not helping the people that you are there to help, right? I like to use the analogy, if somebody's drowning in the ocean and you're there in a boat and you see them, they don't care how you reach out to them. They don't care if you row up to them. They don't care if you throw them, a raft or a lifeline or what have you. They just want help. And when you are not putting yourself out there, then that person is not able to get your help, right? And so oftentimes our mindset gets in the way because we start feeling like, oh, people are going to judge us, so I'm not going to put this out there, or maybe this is wrong, I don't know what I'm doing, all that other stuff. And so we have to have the mindset, I like to say, play this whole game of business that we're in as if you've already accomplished whatever it is that you want to accomplish. Whatever whatever winning looks like for you in the business, play like you've already won in the business. Like your success is inevitable. And when you have that mindset shift, you start making decisions very differently in your business. You're like, I know this is going to work out. So I don't know. I'm having some little bit of doubt in that, but I'm playing like, you know what? Success is inevitable. So I'm going to go for it. Right. And the other thing too, that a lot of people do is they work from the past. And I recently talked about this on a recent podcast episode where they start thinking about, oh, I want to do this, or what if I did this? But they look at their past experiences, past maybe failures, quote unquote, and that dictates what they do or don't do going forward, and how they act towards whatever it is came up for them. Rather than, what if we worked from possibility going forward? What if like anything we wanted to do was possible? And this goes back to like, what if we played like our success was inevitable? And so if we look at it from the perspective of, you know what, anything is possible, rather than what happened in the past is in the past, anything is possible going forward. It just changes how we do business, and changes how the trajectory of what we're doing in the business.
The opposite of scarcity that we hear so often is abundance
Yep.
thinking.
Yep.
And you recently kind of referenced this idea of some of the sort of abundant mindsets that 6 and 7 figure businesses a lot of times have in common.
Yeah. And I kind of break it down into things like our thoughts, like we just talked about, working from possibility instead of past, from the past, playing the game, if you will, like it's already won, it's already done. The other two things there are money and commitment. Money is is the big scary thing, right? So many people worry about it, and myself included. I've struggled with anxiety since as far back as I can put it, like 7th grade. So it's been a struggle for me. And one thing that I've learned over the years, especially after the corporate world, especially in creating my own business, was that money's energy. And we're going to get a little woo woo here for a second, but money is energy, right? It flows in, it flows out, and it's created by two different things. Number one, it's created by the energy that we have. So if we're constantly worrying, we're really shutting off that flow of money into our business, in what we're doing. The other thing is that the amount of money that we're making in our business is directly related to the amount of value that we are providing for people. And I like to say, as long as there are people out there to serve and who need our help, money's always going to be there, right? One of my students recently said something that was really, really smart. I hadn't really thought about it like this. Is like, we're in really interesting times right now. The money, there's the same amount of money is out there. It's just kind of shifted where it is. And I think this kind of goes into that whole energetic thing, that it flows in and flows out. But as long as there are people out there to serve and who need our help, there's always going to be money there to be made. And, with I don't know how many people there are in the world. There's a lot of people out there who need our help, right? And this plays into, not playing small and playing a much larger game, getting out there to help people. And the more people that we help, the bigger impact we have. It's obviously directly going to relate to the revenue there. And then the third piece of that was the commitment part. If we are even 99% committed to our business and helping people move, helping people through our business, we're going to have to recommit every single day because we're not 100% committed to what we're doing. Because when we're 100% committed, it just makes decisions a whole lot easier. It just makes things a whole lot more smooth as we go forward there. And so if we are 100% committed, both you and your team, if you have a team, that 100% commitment and taking 100% responsibility, that is going to be a game changer for your business.
That's huge. And I know for me too, personally, I like what you're saying about having to recommit every day and how everything just works better when you're in that place. Sometimes it feels like that flow place. It's very similar to that. If you know 100% this is where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing, things just, it clicks, it flows, yeah. Your creativity flows, your productivity increases, all that really lines up. And so many people struggle with those issues, and maybe commitment, it could be the root of some of that. I think that's really interesting that you said that. We're talking a lot of our listeners are thinking about starting something. They may not have started something yet. And so we always want to talk too about how do we help people in a way that we know they want help, right? So how do you make sure that there's a demand for what you're offering? And this could be someone who's starting out, or maybe it's someone who's sort of struggling to scale. How do you know for sure that what you're offering is the right thing?
Yeah. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make, and I've kind of made a joke about this when students come into my world, if you will, my business, they're often telling me about, an online course that they've created, or, they've spent a lot of time putting this program together, what have you. And I'm like, awesome. How many students do you have? How many customers have paid you money for it? And they're like, well, I haven't launched it yet. It's like, well, if you got to me sooner, I would have told you to do a little bit differently. So one of the best ways and what I like to teach in my business is, look, validate your offer first. Get people to buy it first before you spend all this time creating it. I was talking to somebody recently where they spent like the last 3 months creating this course and stuff like that, and they hadn't had anybody purchase it yet. And they were, again, mindset wise, they were all worried. It's like, ooh, is somebody going to buy this? And so how I've always launched my programs is I create an outline of the program. I decide who this is for, who it's not for, what is the promise of the program, meaning what is the transformation that someone's going to have once they go through my program. And that's what I sell. I don't sell necessarily the entire course, although I'm telling them what all the things I just mentioned there, but I can do that. I can have people pay me for the course prior to creating it. And so I'll never forget the very first time I sold my course was January 2014. And I sold it I want to say I sold it for the first time on a Thursday. And I told them that I was open. They were going to get the first module, if you will, the following Monday. And I hadn't even created it yet. And it's like, nothing's going to light a fire as like, people paying you money for something that you need to create that you're going to deliver to them. And so, but what I was doing there was like, what? I have this idea for, at the time, it was a Facebook ads course, and I didn't know if people were going to buy it. So I did exactly what I just said. I create the promise, the outline of it, what they're going to learn, all this other stuff. And then I put it out there, and I did a webinar for it. And I sold a bunch of spots in the program. And so what I did was I delivered it live. So I said week 1 was module 1, and I created module 1 for that first week. And then the next week was module 2. And so basically I sold it first, I validated it, and then I delivered it. But now after I deliver it, I now have an asset that I can go out and sell. I've already validated it. I know people want it. And I can also take their feedback, make improvements to the course or the program, and then put those in there and then sell it again.
What we're talking about ultimately today is scaling a business. Um, I guess I wonder, to go back to the mindset thing, if too many people, when they start their home hustle, their side hustle, their solopreneurship venture, if they're only thinking about it in terms of replacing their current income, like being able to go independent, and maybe that's one of the limiting thoughts, is we just don't think ahead about how much bigger this could be.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if, of your students, is that a common problem, or do they come to you because they really are already thinking big?
Um, a little mix, and generally they're not coming to me with that, like they're thinking too big. Normally I have to kind of help them to think bigger than what they already are. And when you, Josh, when you're mentioning having a side hustle, leaving their day job or what have you, when I left, so I left the corporate world September 12th, 2000, excuse me, September 30th, 2012. And for me, I was $75,000 in debt. I wanted to have basically a safety net, if you will. And I decided in 2010 that I wanted to leave and start my own thing, if you will. I didn't know what that was exactly, but I said, you know what, I want to be out of debt, and I want to have that safety net before I make the jump. And so I was doing Facebook ads on the side. I was teaching myself. This is, again, 10 years ago, doing some ads for clients and so forth. I did a little course at the time. And so I was in the corporate world selling online advertising. So I was making very good money. So I was in a point where I wasn't going to, anytime soon anyway, equal my day job in the amount of money that I was bringing in. And so I know a lot of people who make the jump and they're like, I'm going to make the jump and figure this out. I know other people who are like, I want to equal my day job revenue or my income before I make the jump, or what have you. And so that's what I did, for that. And so and I really fumbled around for 15 months, because between the fall of 2012 and January 2014, I didn't really know what it was to like have my own business. I had never done it before, and I was just fumbling around. I started a podcast back then, and I really wasn't selling anything. So when I was like, why aren't I making any money? Well, it's like I'm not selling anything. And it really wasn't until I got really clear on who I wanted to serve, what problem I wanted to serve, and how I wanted to help them, and doing the launch that I just explained just a minute ago, that's when things really started to take off. And that's when I started to think about, oh, there's a bigger picture here. The possibility is huge. And that's where a lot of people come in to my business, where I start helping them, is they're having some success in their business, but then they kind of hit a roadblock. They hit, I call it a blind spot. They don't know what's holding them up, but they just know they're stuck in the business. And so that's where I feel like that's one of my superpowers. I'm able to look at a business and say, oh, this is what is holding you up. And oftentimes it is, first of all, that mindset that we talked about early on, but then we get into more of the strategic stuff and everything like that. And it's once they get unblocked, if you will, to see what the potential is and the impact that they can have with their business and the people that they can help, that's the coolest thing, I think, because we oftentimes think like, oh, I'm just doing this to make money or doing this as a business. But when we really step back and think about the people that we're actually impacting with our business and helping, that's really the cool part, I think.
Amy, was there that moment for you when you first went all in, on the solo side? I assume you had several clients lined up, but was there that moment for you where you realized I can go much bigger than just this handful of clients that I already have?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And, I mean, Josh, as you know, and some of you guys listening know, that I started out as a freelance writer and did that for 3 years and made enough to pay my bills, but not really enough to go to the movies. Like, I was barely getting by. And then I was fortunate enough to work with Success Magazine, and for 4 years got to study at the feet of many masters. And there was a point when I relaunched with a different business plan and a different business model in mind, that I realized that if I wanted to really serve in a bigger way, I had to think of myself in a different way, and I had to think of my business in a different way. And it was that moment where I decided, it was really, I remember it was a couple years into it when I had a really big aha moment, and I was talking to a friend on the phone, and I had been helping freelancers to scale their businesses. And my friend said, "Who would you jump out of bed to help?" And it wasn't freelancers. I mean, it was these people, and freelancers, right? It was this other group, and it was this other way of serving that I had had the opportunity to do with a couple of clients already one-on-one, but I wanted to do that in such a bigger way. And I think that shift in seeing who I really wanted to help was a big part of that, for me. And I know, Rick, you talk a lot about finding the right customer and making sure you're helping the right people.
Mm-hmm.
What's your experience in people maybe starting out kind of with the wrong audience, or maybe having to find a new one?
Yeah, excuse me. And I can speak from my own experience with that, but also some of the things I see with my students. So for me, I've actually come full circle in my business where I started out serving, as I call them, online experts. So they're creating an online course, they're teaching their expertise. They're an online educator, they're coach, et cetera. And that's how I started out serving. But as with most things in our business, and I think this is kind of what you were alluding to there, Amy, as well, is like you have opportunities come up and you're like, wait, this is working for this group over here. Why not try this one over here and add this to the mix? And so that's what I did. I started serving local businesses, and I started serving ads managers. And before I knew it, I was serving, 4 different audiences. I had products over here for this group and this group. And it was like, that's an illusion too, is we think like the more stuff that we have and the more people that we serve, the bigger our business is going to be, which isn't necessarily the case. And so I simplified from there, and I got back to who I really, really wanted to serve, was that online expert, for the reason that I just mentioned, because I know that when I'm helping somebody grow their online business, I'm indirectly helping their students live better lives. And so I call it the ripple effect. And so that's what's been really important for me. And I've come full circle again after 6 years, decided to do this last year. The other thing I see as far as my students go is that they think they know who they want to serve, but they really don't have a really deep understanding of that person. And oftentimes I'll talk to them, and they will be in the same boat. I think, like Amy, like you were talking about, and like what I was just mentioning, is that they're trying to serve like 5 different audiences. And so, what the messaging gets much harder, how they serve them, having offers for, it just gets a whole lot more convoluted really easily. And so getting them to narrow down who they serve and who lights them up and what problem do you serve for them specifically, and then really deeply understand that niche, that audience, so that you can speak to them. You can be basically in their head. What are they thinking? And you're able to answer that for wherever they're at in their journey. That's really, I think, and what I found over the years is that's really what's going to allow you to scale your business that much more quickly.
So there can be some divide between um, the customers that you appeal to currently and the ones who you want, like your ideal client. And I think that there's a lot of sort of divergent writing out there about whether to think about an avatar that you've identified, or your one ideal client, or your 10 biggest fans, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you kind of break in that debate?
Yeah. So I look at it. Through a couple different lenses. I do look at who is my ideal person that I want to serve in the business. What type of business they have, where are they at in their business? And frankly, I'm also looking at, like, especially if I'm in a coaching perspective, I'm looking at their personality, their mindset, all that stuff. I want to work with people who energize me and who are, understand the value of coaching and all that stuff. So I'm looking at it from that perspective, but then I also, the ad side of me, if you will, looks at it in a completely different light. And I think, if we can geek out for a second on the ad side,
Yeah.
this is the big mistake that people make with their ads targeting. When I'm talking about ads, I'm generally talking about Facebook and Instagram advertising, that they think about their ICA, if you will, right? Their ideal customer avatar. And it's like, Jenny, who commutes 25 minutes a day to her corporate job, and she's 35 years old, and she got, and it's that information is helpful. But when it comes to an ads perspective, you've got to have what I call a holistic understanding of that target audience, meaning what interests do they have? Where do they shop? What do they read? Do they go to conferences? Do they watch movies? What are their hobbies? Like all that type of stuff, because that information is what's going to allow you to paint a much better picture from an advertising perspective on the targeting side, and allow you to test and all that different stuff. So I'm looking at it through a couple different lenses. And that's how I also think help my students is that, look, you've got your avatar, who you want to reach just to work within your business, but then you got to take it a step further on an ad side. Like that's how I kind of geek out about it.
It's interesting because I've done Facebook ads as well for my business, and the most success I had on this, and for those of you who are listening and you're not interested in ads, hang with us for just a minute because we've got a point to this we're going to come around to. But I did these Facebook ads recently. The best results I've ever gotten, basically using that input that you just talked about, similar approach where I just looked at everybody basically who I had helped and served and I knew was my ideal client, and then some who I thought would be. And I looked at everything that they liked on Facebook. And you can see all that, right? You can see everything that they like. And I just looked at all their pages and I made this nifty little chart and compared them all. And then I picked the ones that they all had in common. And when I advertised to people who like those things, which by the way, they had nothing to do with writing books. These were interests that had nothing to do with book writing or online business or anything. Yep. But when I advertised to people who like those things, my ad results were great. Yeah. And it is about thinking about who is this person really, not just why are they buying your product, but who really are they? And so I think if you're starting a side hustle or you're trying to scale and you're trying to reach these people, really ask yourself, okay, who are they? Not just why do they want to buy what I've got? And that question of who are they goes into what are they afraid of? What are they interested in? What kind of family do they have? Those kind of questions that, the things that are most important to you, the listener, are the things that are most important probably to your customers as well. And so really, aligning with that is vital. Don't you think, Rick?
Absolutely. And oftentimes we start businesses, we start our side hustle solving a problem that we experience ourselves. And so we can think about, oh, well, where were we when we were looking for this solution that you've now created? And so you can look at like, all right, what was I feeling? What type of, what kind of emotions did I have? What was I going through? That sort of thing. And so as you start to put your messaging out there and start to attract this audience, that's one way to do it, is to look at like all these things that you were feeling and going through at your point, whenever that was in your life. And now you have, you're that future paced person, if you will. You're where that person's trying to get to. And your solution helps them get there. So you can think about and position it from where you were. And so your potential customer is probably where you were, and they want to get to where you are now. So you get to show them what's possible. And I love that you did that exercise, Amy, because most people don't do that work. And they're like, oh, this doesn't work. It's like, well, it works. You got to put the work in to understand your customers.
It took a long time.
Yeah.
It really did.
That's why no one wants to do it.
It paid off. It really did. And I think that goes into everything we're doing. If you're starting something, it does take some work on the front end. You really have to spend some time thinking and looking at and considering what do people really want and feel. And at the same time, if you're trying to scale your business, maybe you're already there. You feel like you're rocking it with your customers. You know what they want, but you're not sure how to grow without increasing that other side, right? The administrative side. Maybe you need some help. Maybe you need that money for advertising and you don't have it. How do people get past that that kind of plateau that can be reached occasionally? Do you find your students reach that?
Yeah, meaning trying to do everything yourself?
Yes.
Yeah. Almost everybody that comes to me is in that boat. Yeah, and again, this is another area where I can completely relate to where people are when they come to me for that type of stuff. Is like they're doing all the things in their business. I have a student right now, for example, who is doing pretty close to $1 million in her business and all by herself. Like, amazing. However, she's a fast approaching burnout because she's doing everything in the business. She's doing the customer service, and she's doing the email writing and the social media and actually creating the products and all this other stuff. And it's like, we can get to a point of doing it ourselves, but then, we're going to reach a point where we can't do everything ourselves. And it really comes down to what type of business do you want to have and why are you creating that business? And I like to say, create your business around your life, not your life around your business. And so if our goal, for example, is to, I don't know, spend more time with our family or what have you, well, is that actually aligning with what we're doing in our business? I've built my business. I will say a lot of people are surprised when they hear this. I built my business with a very small team. And when I say very small, a couple of day-to-day people, meaning full-time people. And then I have contractors who do different things like the podcast and so on. And that's it, which is very different than what I originally wanted. I thought I wanted a big team. And I reached a point, and a lot of that changed when I had my daughter. Like, I don't want all that, right? But the point is that you can absolutely grow an amazing business, a profitable business with a very small team. And I would say, hire somebody before you think you need them. And, we could spend a whole thing on hiring, but you don't, hiring is a daunting thing for a lot of entrepreneurs and people starting out in their side hustle. But it doesn't have to be, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. I mean, you can just do a couple hours a week, which can be game changing for you. And so, yeah, just get to a point where you're doing it yourself, and you will reach a point you'll kind of know, you're like, what, stuff is falling through the cracks. It's really important. I need to be focusing on my zone of genius, which is, teaching or whatever it is that you're doing specifically. And then you can get some help in the other areas, whether it's customer service or emails or what have you, that will allow you to spend more time of your time specifically in the things that you should be doing. And that's a big thing that we work on. One of the first thing I have people do when I start working with them is we do a time audit. Where are you spending your time? And 9 times out of 10, they're spending their time on these smaller tasks that are not in their zone of genius, if you will. And that is a big thing that's holding them back from scaling their business.
So let's geek out a little bit more on ads if you're interested.
Yeah, let's do it. Always.
What makes, and this is probably to someone like yourself, this is a very big, way too generic question, but on the grand scale, what makes a good Facebook ad?
I mean, first and foremost, the targeting. You have to dial in your targeting. You have to know who you want to speak to, and having to understand that we were just talking about, and that Amy just took us through. You have to understand who it is that you want to reach, right? The other thing is you got to have a specific goal. And you might be like, well, really, Rick? But that's the thing, is like 9 times out of 10, when people come to me with their ads, that's the first question I ask them is, what are you trying to accomplish with your ads? And a lot of people are saying, well, I'm just boosting this post or what have you. And I'm like, okay, what's the reason behind it? And they say, well, I want more people to see my stuff. Okay, but why? Like, what's the goal there? Are you trying to get people registered for a webinar? Are you trying to build your email list? You're trying to get, your videos just seen, or whatever it is. Have a clear goal of what you want to accomplish. And so clarity of goal, that's going to dictate what the strategy is that you're doing, clarity of your target audience. And then, kind of stating the obvious here, but when it comes to an ad, you want to catch people's attention with the ad. And I don't mean be obnoxious with the ad, but people are scrolling through real quick on their phones, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. And so you want to have that scroll stopping ad, if you will, that's going to catch their attention and get them to stop and get them to consume it. a video is a great thing to be doing on either platform, Facebook or Instagram. And when it comes to video, most people overthink it. They're like, oh, I don't want to do this big production. No, grab your phone and just start recording. Some of my best video ads I've ever done are literally me walking down the sidewalk with a coffee in my hand, and I got my phone out in front of me, and I'm recording that, recording that video. And so, think about connecting with your audience. Again, this goes back to everything we've been talking about, understanding them, where they're at, speaking to them as if you're sitting down for coffee, just having a conversation with them in your ad, whether it's written copy or whether it's in your video, and then give them a call to action. Tell them what you want them to do. Be very clear. Say, hey, go over here. I have this free resource for you, or, be on the lookout for my next video or what have you. Just be really clear on that. And so those are the factors that I look at that make ads really compelling and tend to be high converting.
So when we're talking about call to action and we're talking about, okay, what's the reason, what's the point behind your ad, and you're sending people to things. For someone who's new to the online world, what's working right now? I mean, what should they be sending someone to a free PDF download? Should they be sending someone to a webinar?
Starting a podcast.
Starting a podcast, writing a book.
Yeah.
Like what, in your experience, what do you feel like are some of the best things that are really working right now?
From an ads perspective or just in general?
Well, let's start from an ads perspective.
Yeah. So I think from an ads perspective, you absolutely want to be building your email list. I think every business, whether it's online or, a brick and mortar, really should be having an email list, which gives you a way to communicate with your target audience. So from an ads perspective, having a lead magnet, as we call it, something to give in exchange for their email address, something of high value to them that's going to give them some sort of win regarding the challenge that they're facing. So that's really great. The other thing is video. Just getting in front of your target audience with a message that's going to resonate with them. And this, obviously with video, it allows you to build rapport. You can connect with people, or it gives you your audience an easier time to connect with you, right? Than as opposed to like a standard image. So video is a great thing to do, and you can do it just as more like brand building. And again, from a strategic perspective, you could put a video out there that builds audiences, and we'll get a little technical here for a second, but you can build audiences of people based on how long they watch your video, and then you can retarget those people. But also you can do a video with a call to action. One of the biggest ad types that still people are not taking advantage of, that, from a supply and demand thing, there's a lot of supply and the pricing is really low, is Instagram story ads. So Instagram story video ads, Instagram story regular types of ads. So as you're scrolling through Instagram stories and you see an ad there, those are 9 times out of 10 my most highest performing ads, as are for my students. They're great ad units. So that's from an ads perspective. But, as outside of that, 100% podcast. And am I biased? Yes, because I've had a podcast, I've been doing this a long time, but I get asked a lot by my students, is it too late to start a podcast? They think like, oh, it's been all this talk about podcasting for a few years now, we've missed the boat. Heck no. I heard a number today that it's less than 1 million podcasts exist. And like the number of blogs or something is like 60 million or something like that. Like the disparity between the number of podcasts and the number of blogs and YouTube channels and all that stuff is huge. And so we are still very much in the infancy of podcasting. And I'll tell you, my business, this is my second podcast, my business completely changed when I started a podcast. And it is hands down my favorite thing I do in the business. It's so cool to be able to get on and talk about a topic that speaking to your target audience and reach people, across the world. Right. And, I get messages all the time from all over. It's like, thank you so much for, putting out that episode or what have you. And so I think everybody should have a podcast, hands down.
I think just the way you said that just a second ago about how it's so cool to be able to do that really speaks to one of the last points that I want to get to here, is reinforcing for people how important it is to have a passion. Like you don't enjoy the podcast if you don't love what you're doing. You
Yep.
probably don't get that far. And so as you talk about making pivots in your business over the years, scaling and rescaling, just the world changes and you need to change with it. How important is that foundational element of having a passion for what you do, and how do you kind of rechannel that over and over again?
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I left the corporate world, I mean, my motivation was, I was still single at the time. My motivation was I wanted to work on my terms, and I wanted to, work on the things that I wanted to work on, and work my own hours and all that stuff. And that was it. Like, just being honest, like I wanted to make a lot of money doing what I wanted to do. And has that changed? No. But as we've gone on, just being honest, but as we've gone on here, now it's become more of the impact I'm able to have, right? I'm able to help people, and I hear stories, very grateful that I get to hear stories from my students whose lives I change. And that's really why I do what I do. And obviously providing for my family as well. But, that's really where, as things change, be really clear on why you're doing what you're doing. You do have to have a passion for it, but I really don't think you have to be in love with it every single day, but you do have to have a passion for why you're doing what you're doing, right? And just being what's your deeper purpose for what you're doing? And that is really what's going to drive you each day. Because there's going to be days where you get up and you're like, oh, I don't want to work on whatever it is that you're working on. But when you can remember the deeper purpose and the real why behind what you're doing, that can be, what keeps you going and what keeps you motivated and continuing to drive forward.
So very important to always keep that in mind. Rick, thanks so much. We really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. This is a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here, Rick.
And that does it for another episode of Hustle from Home. Thank you guys for all being here. We'll be back next week.